Yes, but then I return to the pursuit of bringing history to the future in Europeana. Yes, well, it won't go any higher, will it? So I'll try to speak a bit more in the microphone. With Europeana, this image that you see here, I think is a very nice metaphor for the apparent conflict we're in. It says it's open, but there's a wall there. So it's a very René Magritte type thing here. I would like to tell you a little bit about what we in Europeana do with open source software and how we contribute to it. How and why do we use FLOSS? And it has nothing to do with dental hygiene. FLOSS is the new acronym that stands for Free, Libre, Open Source Software. Apart from using it, how do we stimulate others to use it and to contribute to it? And last but not least, how do we contribute to it? Here's a list of some of the open source components that we use. It's an incomplete list, but for each of these components, there are quite a few commercial equivalents available as well. There's perfectly good database management systems, enterprise search systems, CRM systems, CMSs, whatever. And each of these are quite capable of filling in some of the building blocks, some of the steps in the value chain that Europeana offers. A value chain of ingesting, enriching, storing, indexing, and providing metadata to search, to provide a unified search for Europe's digitized cultural heritage. So why don't we use the commercial or the non-free, if you like, software instead? Well, there's a few reasons. One is we believe, so it's almost like a religious thing, isn't it? We believe in open, not just open access to data, but also, as an extension of that, open access to the tools and components we create. It's also about giving back to the community. We are funded by public money, and for that reason alone, I think we think the results of our work should be given back to the community. It also has to do with the levels of funding that we get. If we're a large-scale system with many users, thankfully. That means that if we try to negotiate commercial licenses with any of the big commercial vendors, say big database management systems, for example, the resulting license prices would be prohibitive. We wouldn't be able to afford it. Also, the type of funding that we get from the European Commission is usually in terms of project funding, and that's expressed in man-months, so effort rather than hard cash. And commercial vendors want hard cash, so it wouldn't be possible for us to pay for it. There's also the point about interoperability and integration that Peter just made as well. We experienced that as well. Commercial vendors do not have any incentive to make it easy for you to integrate with their products. If you use a database management system from vendor X, I won't name any names here, and you say, but I want to create a good, solid search on top of that, then they say, oh yeah, but we also have this search component to our system, rather than allowing you to easily integrate with other search components. And last but not least, the way we cooperate with other EU projects, it's also a reason for us to use open source software, because they use it, then it makes our life in interoperating with those projects a lot easier. And our experience with these open source software components, and I showed you the list just now, is that usually they are quite reliable. They are fairly well documented. It's good to it's fairly easy to integrate with them, and of course it's not without its problems. as any software integration effort is. But usually it's quite possible to work through them. And we've also found that for each of these components, support is available through specialized, semi-specialized consultancy companies, usually at much better rates than if you look at vendor-specific consultancy in the commercial world. However, not everything that is open is necessarily good. The open jaws might be an example of that. There's also risks associated with open. There's not one person, developer, that you can turn to in a contractual sense if something goes wrong. There's no SLA, there's no guaranteed response time on bug fixes or issues or changes that you need to have made to the system. If you want to have a change done to a core component, you either have to do it yourself or find somebody else to do it for you, contribute it to the system, or there are many ways of doing it, but it's your responsibility. And that is for an operational system such as Europeana with clear goals and tight deadlines is sometimes hard. We also, from time to time, because of the complexity and the scale of what we do, sort of push the envelope of what components can and cannot do, which leads to a feeling of we're pioneering in some areas, and that's not necessarily all bad, because that feeling of pioneering is also very rewarding, very nice for the developers in Europeana, because it gives them a chance to use their creativity and to experiment with solutions. As I told you, we strongly believe in free and open source software, and we try to stimulate it by enabling others to reuse the stuff that we build, but also by stimulating other projects in the Europeana space, if you like, or in the European cultural commons, as we now address it, to release their project results also under an open license. We are funded by the European Commission, so we have a preference for EUPL license. And sometimes, which specific license to release a component under, that leads to some discussion, because there are many open source licenses and they're not all compatible. And sometimes other projects have done work based on other components that are released under different licenses, GPL or Apache license or whatever. And you get into some fairly detailed legal discussions about compatibility of licensing. But convincing other projects to release their work under an open license, at the very least, is not a very hard sell. They too are usually done by partners in academia or by cultural heritage institutions, who are all funded by public money anyway. So sharing under an open license is becoming the norm there. So that's fairly easy. It sometimes gets a bit tricky if those project partners are themselves commercial companies and they build on previous work that they have done and have contributed to the project, which is not available as open source. That work contains their trade secrets, their sometimes patented solutions, and there's a whole discussion about software patents going on at the moment, which I won't bore you with. But it does sometimes limit the types of contributions that we can take in Europeana, because we have this stated goal of providing everything we do under an open license. It leads to long discussions, and at the very least, it leads to a better understanding, both on their side and on our side, of how this software ecosystem, these business models work. And we do see, on the whole, that the the licensing model is sort of on the decline. There's more and more companies that say, okay, we see that the service provision model, so we provide the software as open source and we provide services around it, is a viable way for the company to earn a decent living. Apart from encouraging others to release their software under open source license, we also try to provide facilities for them to make it easy to do that. One of those facilities is Europeana Labs, where which can act as a code repository. It's where we store our code. It's freely available for all to browse and to download. And of course, for some projects, that's great to have a place where you can actually put your software, and we are then able to promote it. For other projects, will have their code already on GitHub or SourceForge, and that's fine also. I mean, as long as it's openly available, we're quite okay with that. Another way to promote projects' results is through the Europeana Thought Lab, which is a place where we showcase demonstrators, prototypes, work that's been done in the projects, and we use that to promote that work to our network. Both environments will migrate somewhere middle or end of next month to our new Europeana Pro website, which is the new web space for the Europeana network. Also, a way of promoting the open source development is this conference, sharing ideas, sharing results of European projects, and also the hackathons we mentioned earlier, that were already mentioned earlier. There's one going on right now in the next room. From those, we try to stimulate the results of those and make it a bit more competitive by awarding prizes. This time, for the first time, one of the special prizes that we will have for the hackathon results is that we take the most promising results and invite the developers of those results to a 2-day workshop in Amsterdam, where we will try to help them with moving the prototype they did in the hackathon to a next level by looking at the business model behind it, or the business case, if you like, but also by looking at graphic design and interaction design. Because it's great to have a cool technical idea, but to develop that into something that that end users will actually want to use, that's usually a next step. And we try to push them a little bit further along that road. And that is an activity that we will do together with the Europeana Connect project. Okay. Now, I've explained how and why we use open source software and how we stimulate others to do the same and to share their results under an open license. But do we practice what we preach? Well, in a sense, maybe not. Europeana in itself is not an open source project. There's only a small group of people that have commit rights to the software, and they're all in the development team in The Hague. At the Europeana office. If we integrate results from projects, that's done as a joint effort, and with the final commits being made by the development team in The Hague. And there's a reason for doing that. Of course, obviously there is a reason. The main reason for that is that we have this operational service, Europeana.eu, that we need to keep operational 24/7, etc., etc. And that means that if you look at successful open source projects, one characteristic that most of them have is that they have very many installations. Most of them have many installations. If you look at Apache, for example, there are, well, tens of thousands of successful installations, millions maybe. And we have one. Well, maybe if we stretch the concept of Europeana a little bit, how many large-scale digital library projects are there? A handful at most. So that means that we are a bit limited in the amount of testing that we can do. All the testing that we can do is done on our test and acceptance environment. Whereas, you know, if you have millions of installations, from those millions, I'm sure there will be a few thousand that are willing to hash out problems in a beta version. For us, that's a bit harder. Also, because there are just not that many equivalent projects out there, it's harder to find people who are really motivated to contribute to that core. So in that sense, Europeana is not an open source, community-driven project. However, I think if you look at some other aspects, I think that we do practice what we preach. The results of Europeana are all available under EUPL, and they are, in fact, used by others as well. Yes, I'll round up. For example, the delving codebase started off by forking off the Europeana codebase. We share our code, we share knowledge about our experience with initiatives such as the Deutsche Digitale Bibliothek and the Digital Public Library of America. We also give back modifications that are done by others on our behalf to, for example, Liferay, which is a CRM system. CMS system, or Sugar CRM, which is obviously a CRM system, give that back to the community. So in those senses, yes, Europeana is contributing to the open source. So, in summary, I would like to say thank you to the open source community, thank you to the Europeana network partners and the developer community, and thank you for your attention.